Well, good morning, everyone, and a very warm welcome to what is the first edition of Lean HE Encore, hosted by Lean HE Europe. So a very warm welcome to you all, and thank you very much indeed for your attendance today and what is sure to be a very exciting programme of presentations. So my name is John Hogg. I am the chair of Lean HE Europe, and joining me today is the Deputy Chair of Lean HE Europe, Svenare Skjeldnes from UiT Arctic University of Norway. We also have Stephanie Spence from the University of Melbourne in Australia, Terence Bos from Windesheim, so apologies Terence, University in the Netherlands, and Linda Spinks from the University of Cambridge. We will have other colleagues joining us in due course from the United States, but it's 4 o'clock in the morning for them at the moment, so we didn't ask them to join quite so early in the day for them. So we have a packed programme for you today. I will see if I can work the technology and share my screen just to give you an overview of what we're going to be doing today. So where are we? There we go. So first up is Stephanie, and Svenare will introduce Stephanie in a second or two. And then we have Terence, who's going to be talking about an approach to implement continuous improvement in education teams. And then finally, we've got Krista and Colin from the University of Michigan, who are going to be talking about leadership matters, but which leader matters the most in delivering lean results. And then once we've heard from those colleagues, Linda Spinks from the University of Cambridge is going to provide a brief overview of what you can expect in the 2024 edition of the Lean HE International Conference hosted by the University of Cambridge. So without any further ado, because you didn't come here to listen to me today, I'm going to shortly hand over to Svenare, who's going to introduce Stephanie. But just in terms of a few logistics, in terms of how things work, we have a question and answer function enabled on the webinar. So you'll be able to ask questions throughout the session. We will we will not be answering questions during the presentations. We will be holding them to the very end, and either Svenare or myself will moderate the question and answer sessions with the various speakers. So we'll try and get through as many of the questions as we can. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to Svenare, who will introduce Stephanie.
Thank you, John. First, I would just like to say I had the fortune to meet Stephanie in October last year, as we both attended the Lean in Higher Education International Conference in San Diego, California. So it's good to have this opportunity to see you again, Stephanie. Stephanie is a service improvement manager at the University of Melbourne, Australia, where the time is now, well, half late in the evening. Stephanie has 15 years of experience in the higher education sector across strategic planning, international recruitment, marketing strategy, event management, and also then in recent years, customer experience and business process improvement. If you talk to her, she will happily tell you that she jumped over the fence into Lean and the Agile world after becoming kind of disillusioned with these clunky processes and tech in her former student-facing work. In recent years, Stephanie has worked on a range of improvement processes, including implementing a university-wide benefits framework, improving the student acquisition process, creating a joint operating model for 2 major service providers, and setting up a new service model for supporting compliance in the casual staff space. Stephanie is, as many others here, passionate about people and improving experiences for her stakeholders. I'm looking very much forward to enjoying your presentation, Stephanie.
Thank you, Spen. It's lovely to be here this morning for you, and that's right, this evening for me. It's just gone 8:20 in the evening in Australia. We had quite a hot day in Australia today, which was lovely towards the end of our summer. I'm very pleased to be here. Thank you for inviting me to attend to present some information and share with you about the University of Melbourne's Service Excellence Capability Build program. 2023 was a pilot for this program, and I'm going to take you through what that was and what that looked like and how it was pulled together. And then I can tell you a little bit about how it's going, because our second cohort has just kicked off yesterday. So I'm going to try and work technology, like John said, and hopefully this will work. So my screen is loading. Okay, there we go, and fabulous. All right, so as I just said, I'm going to present on the Service Excellence Capability Build program. I'm here representing the University of Melbourne. It was such a pleasure to present this to the conference in San Diego last year with my fabulous colleague Alyssa Wan. But this morning, you've just got me. But I'm looking forward to taking you through it and answering any questions at the end. Ultimately, what I'm going to show you today is a program that's been, it was piloted last year and was quite successful and has started again for this year, where the aim is to uplift service excellence and continuous improvement capability across our institution in Melbourne. So this presentation will be in two parts. I'll talk a little bit about the program itself and how we went about setting it up, and then our approach. So just a little bit, I'd be remiss of me not to talk a little bit about the university that I work for. So it's the University of Melbourne. As always, you know, we put some of our rankings up. So ranked #1 in Australia and #14 in the world. These were 2023 numbers. I think we're 34 in the Times Higher Education, to give you an indication of that. We're the second oldest university in Australia. The University of Sydney is, I think, 2 years older than us. And we've got 9 Nobel Prize winners, which I'm very proud of. I think University of California, San Diego, who hosted the conference, I think they had 64, and that blew my mind. So 9 seems quite small in comparison, but I'm still very proud of them. We've got a beautiful city campus. I've got a photo on the next slide about what that looks like, and we're really close to the CBD. It's within walking distance if you like a stroll, but it's about 5 minutes on a tram down there. It's quite a large population of students from lots of different countries, and we have about 41% of our cohort as international students. So this is the campus. This is the Parkville campus. This is our main campus. So you can see the city down in the top of that image. The oval and the athletics track kind of form the centre of the university, and then we've got buildings and colleges around it. So it's a really fantastic campus. We have 6 other campuses which are much more specialist in their delivery of curriculum and research. So, but the Parkville campus is where the majority of the learning and teaching and research takes place for our 9 faculties that we have. It's a walking campus, and I didn't realise that was how nice a feature that was of our campus until I had visited some other universities around the world. There's no cars on it, so you can pretty much walk from one end of the campus to the other. I mean, we are extending closer and closer to the city with growth every year, but you can walk around the campus probably within half an hour, and you can get from one end to the other, you know, faster if you walk quick. And even at times you have to dismount from bicycles if you're riding through campus. There are some corridors are so narrow that you can touch the walls on either side as you walk down them. So it's a beautiful place to work, and I've been there such a long time because I really still enjoy what I'm doing there and being at the campus. This photo, which is also the image I've got on my Zoom background, it's one of the most beautiful sandstone buildings that we have on campus. And the reason for me showing you this is linked to the presentation, in that we are a traditional university, sandstone buildings modelled on some of the overseas institutions like Oxford and Cambridge. but why am I showing you this? The traditional nature of the university, it's quite large. We've got quite a lot of legacy systems and legacy tech. You know, we are a university that has at times been very challenged by the ability to implement sustained change. So, you know, there are great pockets around the university, but more needs to be done, and our team works quite hard to ensure that. But this image is kind of saying this is like the university of the past, and then this is one of our more recent buildings. This is the Melbourne School of Design. That wooden structure in the centre of that photo, that's a hanging classroom. So this is the Melbourne School of Design, our architecture, building and planning area. And it's a hanging classroom. So there's 2 classrooms within that structure that hold 30 students each. And it's an incredible building. But wanting to share that with this photo with you, because there are definitely steps to modernise, not just in building, but also in approach. You know, when I started, lots of change has happened at the university since when I started to now, and it's fantastic to see the acceptance and growth and development of continuous improvement methods and methodologies across human-centered design, digital design, UX, UI, like, you know, all of those. And while there have been the great pockets that I mentioned of change that are happening and improvement that are happening, we're making much better connections across the university, so it's a much more joined up approach. And you'll hear a bit more about how we're doing that in this program. So our goal through this Service Excellence Capability Program is, as it says there, to strengthen problem-solving capabilities across the university by upskilling in areas such as human-centered design, lean, change and comms, as well as project management methodologies. So we aim through this program to embed champions and embed skills at the grassroots level, so that it can grow tentacles and build that way. The area that I work in is called the Operational Performance Group, and it's made up of staff with skills in human-centered design, lean, change and comms, project management, and we've got a data team. So we're a really fantastic unit with a wide range of skills and experience. We all work together to uplift capability across the university in the projects that we do on a day-to-day basis. And this program was born out of wanting to do that further and wider. We don't, as a university, offer like green belt or yellow belt or black belt training in-house, but this is our way of being able to embed these skills in this way. So the program itself, it's a 14-week program, and what we, you know, as with any project that we do, we like to define what success is so that we know that we're progressing. So what does success look like for a project of this nature? We want to build the human-centered design and service improvement capabilities across our institution. We want to also build a community of practice. The first cohort has gone through, and we know that they get together and have coffees regularly because they've told us. So we year on year, we want to build on that community of practice and hope that it spreads further and wider. But so far so good. One of our goals is to provide participants with a safe space to learn and experiment. These people come with a growth mindset commonly. That's what we look for in participants, and there's a slide later that talks a little bit about that. But we want it to be a safe space and an opportunity for them to grow and develop. And so far, we managed to nail that with the first cohort. Hopefully, that can continue. And we deliver on projects that benefit the business area of the participant. So, and I'll talk a little bit about recruitment in a moment, but this slide says that we commonly aim to have 6 to 8 upskilled people per year. So that was our pilot program. We had 6, and this year we are running 2 cohorts in 1 year rather than last year where we ran 1 cohort. So we'll probably end up being able to upskill close to 15 people a year, depending on the numbers, which is fantastic. So who is this program for? Like I said earlier, we really look for people that have a growth mindset, and staff need to be self-motivated. So we have lots of great relationships with different business units across the institution. So the operational performance group is a shared service. So we sit in like a shared service area, and then there's 9 faculties. So we work with other shared service areas as well as the faculties. In the pilot year, we only invited, we commonly targeted staff from other shared service areas, but more and more interest is coming from staff in faculty to be able, because the shared service model has different tiers of support, and so some people are embedded in faculty at different times. So largely, though, we look for people who are self-motivated and that are proactive and demonstrate great initiative, because they need to come to this 14-week program with drive and ability and willingness and ability to define a problem or opportunity and then go about setting up some ways of solving that. One of the things that's on this slide is also about the HE level, the UOM level, the higher education worker level. It says level 7 and above at the university. Originally, we pitched it a little bit lower, but landed on 7 because the discrepancies across the institution just meant that 7 was about the right level, where we had people who were maybe team leaders or people who might have been leading projects or pieces of work that meant that that they had that more initiative and self-motivation. So that was quite a distinct level that we aimed at, and there was quite a bit of talk around that initially. So that's who this program is for. In terms of the types of projects, we look for business units and people in business units that have problems that affect the staff or student experience. We want people to come into this project with a problem, not a solution. We did have a couple of people in cohort 1 who were just convinced that they knew what the solution was, and one of their great learnings out of it. And I saw this guy talk just yesterday at he shared his project again at a forum, and he talked about that again. He said, I thought I knew what the answer was, but stepping back from that solution and actually exploring other areas was a real eye-opener, and he saw great value in being able to do that, which was fantastic learning for him. But when staff are nominated from their business units, they come with a problem, and hopefully it affects just one function, because they have to come with sponsorship from that one function. And it also means that the problem can be solved in kind of one go with this person, or at least steps to being able to solve it or put solutions in place. It's not tech. We're not focused on any, it's more ways of working and experience. This program does not focus on technology, largely because technology change, largely just because of the time that takes. This program is 14 weeks long, which is really quite short, and tech is just didn't fit the bill. And then, aligned with UOM function and strategy, and we need the learnings able to be translated. So we want these people to be able to come with these problems, work with us, and be able to have a really great focus on how this improvement can align to the work that they do that's then aligned to strategy at the University of Melbourne. We did have some learnings from cohort 1 where the 14 weeks just flew by. People would get halfway through the program and they were like, I'm nowhere near where I should be. And the learning was, cut it down again. And then they found their feet a bit easier and were able to progress. So this slide shows you the program components. If you look at the darker blue square boxes at the top, if you read them from left to right as the screen is, so the participant identification happens, and we reach out to our business units. We do some promotion through just our stakeholders that we work with and some of our networks, as well as in like newsletters and the like. And participants are identified from across the university. There's then sponsor and participant briefing session. This is a really key part. The sponsors need to really understand their role in supporting the participant through this project. We set up projects where we commonly have working groups and then sponsor groups that we report into on a regular cadence. so that we can give them updates on how we're progressing in our project. And we expect that to be the same from a sponsor who nominates a participant, so that they've got full support that this problem is important, that they're willing to support the participant through any engagement that they need with stakeholders in their area or outside their area, and that they know what their participants getting into. There's a 2-day training. That 2-day training was in 2023. We've actually extended that to 3 days in 2024, where participants are introduced to the OPG, stands for Operational Performance Group, like I mentioned earlier, where I work. But they're introduced to our problem-solving approach, which is a combination of Lean, HCD, change and comms, and project management, which there's a slide later that talks a bit about that. And participants are full-time on the program. So I'll show you. I think it's the next slide that shows you how we enable that to be the case. But they co-locate with us as well. So we have we hot desk, and we have some hot desks available for them, as well as some meeting rooms where there's opportunity for the participants to be together while they're doing what they're doing and embed in our team. They come to our stand-ups, they come to weekly meetings or fortnightly meetings. They're essentially a part of the team while they're doing this program. And then there's a project showcase at the end, which is wonderful. Attending their project showcases and seeing the relief on their face at the end of the pilot last year was just really wonderful. Now the green boxes, like the rectangles going from top to bottom, these 4 things are what the participants get as part of this program. So ongoing coaching, we have some coaches, and there's a slide later that talks about what the 2023 cohort was, and we had some change. We reviewed our own program and made some change, and I can tell you about that. But they get ongoing coaching from the different areas on an as-needs basis. They're part of our team and encouraged to do any kind of shadowing opportunities, meetings and activities throughout the program to really embed. And it's so funny, small things, they come to our stand-up and they were a bit tentative, and I remember them being quiet. But one of the learnings, one of the participants last year tapped me on the shoulder after her showcase, and she said, "Oh, I was so happy to hear you tell me that you hadn't had a project crisis and that the stakeholders were at a bit of a standstill." She said, I was having a bit of a crisis, and it was just so nice to hear that it was happening to someone else. And she didn't mention that to me at the time. She mentioned it to me at the end of the program, but you just don't realise what impact and effect you can have on somebody. So being open and honest day to day in our work was really important with them, and they got to see that, and that was a great learning that they had, which we didn't think, we didn't think that was going to be such a big learning, but it was, which was great. And then there's a toolkit that we leave them with, and I've seen some of the participants since the project finished do subsequent presentations of what they found in their work, and it's been really well received, which is great. So how do we enable participation? Here's probably a bit of a kicker for people. How do we manage this? The second point there is funded backfilling. We have 2 full-time equivalent staff salaries that we use to support funded backfilling. So we fund replacement employees to ensure that the BAU work continues in these areas. We don't determine how that happens. So the business unit from where the participant comes can determine how that happens. Commonly, staff within the area go on to higher duties, which is a fantastic opportunity for someone else in their team to extend themselves while this is happening, or they get casuals or other backfills. But one of the benefits too is while that person co-locates with us, majority of the time, they're still part of that team that they come from, so they're not absent and still available to answer questions. And commonly, because they're doing work in that business unit, they're visible. So we really think that that's worked well. I think I've mentioned a few of the others, so I'll skip ahead because I'm looking at my watch and I want to make sure I get through all my slides. So what approach do we take in this? So I've mentioned the team and the way the team is structured, but we combine human-centered design and lean tools and methods and methodologies with underpinned by project management and change management as well, to have this collaborative, holistic approach, because we believe that is the best approach to understand the services and processes experiences that we are trying to assist with improving. So we always start with the people that we're designing for, and it's right method or right template or right tool for the right problem. You'll see on a slide later, we have a delivery framework, and the delivery framework goes through a range of different tools, like a great menu that people can, that our own team can choose from, or these program participants can choose from. And it's really a great menu for them to choose. But we have this, they get to kind of determine their own approach that they think is suitable, and with the support of the coaches to help them solve the problem that they come with. So we, the service improvement team, of which I'm a member, we follow the Lean to Make framework, and the double diamond is where our HCD staff predominantly focus. I mean, it's not as linear as this, as you know. It's not always left to right. There's circles of it, or there's diamond. I could present this in multiple different ways, but essentially we just say what this slide is here to show you is that we use both models to focus on making sure that the problem is well understood, and that we support however we're going to implement it, as well as continuous improvement on it. So a bit more about the program. So this is the delivery framework I talked about. So across the top, there are some boxes that talk about project initiation, project planning, and project implementation. You can see the domain boxes there as well. And here's the menu I was mentioning about what different activities can take place in roughly these columns. It's not always set, doesn't have to be, but it fits nicely on a page for us. What are the tools to learn that might sit in that framework and in that component, depending on where you are? And as practitioners, we know that it's not always left to right. You might loop back or have to, start somewhere else, etc. But this is how we present the program to our participants, in the aim for them to learn new skills and apply them in a really focused way. So in week 1, they do a 2-day workshop, which this year is 3 days. And then we have some just-in-time masterclasses. There was some feedback last year that the just-in-time masterclasses maybe were a bit too late in the piece, so we've rejigged that a little bit. But essentially, this is how the program works in our framework. I won't spend much time on this slide. Essentially, there's lots of different models with which you can develop and learn, but we use a 70-20-10 model, and the program fits along that, where really they get most of their benefit learning by doing on their project, and we just provide the support through coaching and networks and interaction, as well as the toolkit, as I mentioned. This is quite a basic slide, but our typical service improvement projects follow these steps, and this is what we get our participants to do as well. And I mentioned that we have some templates, and this is quite a busy slide, and I'm not expecting you to be able to understand it, but some of these they're largely all in PowerPoint packs as well as Word documents, but we offer a template for each thing. So fishbones and current state findings and timelines and RACIs and implementation plans aligning to the steps in the framework. We have done projects for the university over and over again, and have a fantastic template resource that we draw upon and update and provide to our participants to support the work that they're doing. So they don't have to do the thinking of how the presentations need to be. They just have to think about the content itself, which is I mean, it's great even as a member of the team when I'm doing my own project to have these fantastic templates that we build upon year on year. So now I get to talk a little bit about the project program success that we had, and you've heard me drop in some points along the way. But the cohort 1, there was 6 participants, and we had 16 coaches and 7 trainers along the way. The trainers might have been someone who ran a masterclass or who ran the initial training, the 3-day training, 2 or 3-day training, but then they weren't necessarily an ongoing coach. So, for example, I might have been a trainer, or I was a trainer in the cohort 1, but not a coach. What I want you to see on this slide is just the different participating areas. I really like the bottom one, the research, innovation and commercialization, the bio risk. it was so interesting hearing this project and what standardizing a particular form about biological imports and how the team was so thrilled. But it was just such a different area that we were used to, because so many of the others came from student facing and areas with student experience as a real focus. But the last one was so interesting. But yeah, that's a little bit of a summary of who participated and what their projects kind of focused on. I don't expect you to read this, but we review our own work on a regular basis and we go through retros. And so we did a retro with them about what worked well and what didn't work well. And then as a result, changed this next intake to make sure we were maximising the programs for everybody involved. And it'd be remiss of me to leave out what our sponsors said as well. They thought there was some fantastic feedback about how participants the growth that they had throughout the project, actually getting some fantastic outcomes, as well as just seeing the staff, seeing the staff really grow and develop was what a lot of the sponsors said, and the benefit that they got from what the outcomes and the outputs were from this work. This is my second last slide before I can go to questions. So this was the 2024 proposed timeline that we showed last year. It has just kicked off yesterday, the day before, yesterday, the cohort 2, 6 participants, and they're doing their 3-day training, and it's going well. Yeah, there is ambition to run 2 cohorts this year with a pretty short turnaround time, but I'm pretty confident that we are ready to do that. Some of the changes, the coaches, last year they had coaches available at their disposal, but there wasn't anybody necessarily allocated to the participants, and we've made a change where each participant now gets 4 allocated coaches across change and comms, project management, design and service improvement, so that that's a much so that they can actually build a stronger relationship with a particular group of people. That's been a change. We've refined our materials and we've got much more change and comms involvement earlier on than we did. So there've been some of the things that we have done. But I will stop talking there, and I hope I didn't talk too fast. When I get excited, I talk fast, so I certainly hope I didn't do that today. But thank you for listening, and I can see a few questions are coming into the chat, so I will stop sharing and throw back to Sven.
Unfortunately for you, Stephanie, you've got me moderating the Q&A. So we've got a few that have come in, which is great. So thank you to those who have submitted questions. We'll try and get through as many as we can. The first one is, what is the success rate for people completing their projects? And if there's an additional part of it, are there many that start and don't finish? So if you can answer that first, please, Stephanie.
Yeah, great question. And I did touch on early on in the presentation where there was a particular participant who just wasn't making progress, and 7 weeks in had a little bit of a panic. They all complete something to the point where in their handover or recommendations there's an acknowledgement of anything that's unfinished. So one of the pieces was enrolment variation, and 50,000 enrolment variation forms come in for a range of different reasons in any given year, and this person wasn't able to implement all or get all process change recommended, but had a checklist of items to then follow up afterwards, and that's turned into a subsequent project for this particular person who's working on it now, using the skills that they gained from the program. So some people went back to their BAU jobs with debt work, if you like, or overhang, but we still tried to support them in their handover pack and showcase to be really clear on what happened. It's okay if that happens. We all have projects that blow out, and scope creep was a really big thing for them. But yeah, more or less they were successful, if not in implementing something, in implementing future steps that need to be taken. So I hope that answers that person's question. Great,
thank you very much. And the next question we've got is in relating to IT systems changes. So based on your experience in working on improvement projects in the University of Melbourne, how many, well, approximately percentage-wise require IT systems changes as part of those improvement projects?
Oh, that's another great question. Wow, what percentage? Lots actually, but I think what we focus on, you know, people, process or technology. So we look at, is there a training or an education or a capability uplift within staff that can be done even if a system change needs to happen? Is there a process change, even if that, so is there a manual process or a process component that then relates to the tech piece, or is it just a tech piece? So yeah, we're heavily reliant on tech systems, and I mentioned a lot of our systems are outdated, or we're, you know, updating as we go. But yeah, I probably wouldn't be able to get, you know, ballpark it, but lots.
Yeah. Okay. And I guess a follow up to that then, and I think that's certainly something that I've experienced is how do you prioritize those systems changes? Because obviously there'll be a finite capacity of IT colleagues. So how do you prioritize what you would like them to work on?
Yeah, we work closely with our business services colleagues and do planning poker really in terms of the ability to determine what gets priority. But the strategic focus is where the priority has to lie. So for this year and for the next couple of years, our teams are focusing on student services delivery as a really large improvement piece of work, a program of work, transformation actually, I should say. So any systems in that space are what the focus is going to be for us. Okay,
great, thank you. So next question, well, it starts off with fantastic presentation, thank you. So very, very positive, and I would echo those sentiments. If another university was going to embark on rolling out a similar approach, what key advice would you give them based on what you have learned so far?
Yeah, great question. I've said that 3 times in a row now, but these are really great questions. What advice would we give them? Understand what you're getting involved in, but we started with stakeholders and business units that we had good relationships with. So we didn't go out and try and get people on board who had no idea about what we had done or who we were. We had allies really in the area that were proactively wanting our time more, and this program was perfect for them. So we started with allies. And I think just start small as well. We started with 1 cohort, and we were even going to be happy if we had 4 participants. So when we got 6, we were great. So start small would be another piece of advice I would give. But also take risks. You know, they knew that they were part of the first cohort, and they knew that we were learning by doing, and that was, and being honest and open with them about that too. So yeah, that's another thing I would say.
Great, thank you. Okay, next we've got loads of questions. We'll see how many we can get through.
I'm always happy, John, to I can always pen some answers to some questions if I need to later on. So that's an option.
So a question, did you adjust, so you talked about the job level of people that are involved in this. Did you adjust that level from cohort 1 to 2? So that's probably just a yes or a no. And do you have a longer term target for staff participation?
We did change it from 6 to 7, yes. So but that was early on in the cohort. I think we were sifting through some of the applications, and early on we realized that that was an early on change, not from cohort 1 to cohort 2, but within cohort 1. And do we have a longer term success measure? No, actually. I think the aim is to be able to run 2 up to 7 participants in each cohort a year, and to build on the community of practice. So we want the community of practice to be really active long term, but we haven't got numbers like there's no target of like 100 people or that type of thing. It's more about embedding the change champions for sustainable change, and then having this community of practice so that we can build the capability from, you know, grassroots up. So that's what success looks like for us.
Yeah, good. Okay, thank you. And I guess there's a couple of questions that build on that a little bit. So One is around, did the participants work closely with the staff in their own areas to develop the solutions? And if they were adopting that approach, were there any issues with accessing those colleagues, competing with business as usual activities?
Yeah. So they did liaise very heavily with staff back in their own business units. They were commonly the subject matter experts for the problem at hand, given that it came from that unit, which was a requirement. I think one of the things that staff are good at, and not saying or saying yes to being involved, people like to talk about their pain points, and people like to talk about where they're having challenges, having that whinge to anyone who will listen, but knowing that they were having that whinge to someone who was potentially going to turn it around for them. So yeah, there was definitely that time, but there are also forums in some of our areas where these people have weekly catch-ups or communities of practice within their own areas. So we did encourage staff to utilise times that existed already rather than putting extra time in people's diaries, because we know how it feels.
Great. Okay, thank you. And in terms of the community of practice, I guess linked to that, do the participants is there evidence that the participants continue to initiate change after their involvement in the programme?
So we've had, in terms of initiate change, I think what they're able to do and what we are seeing is that education piece. So we're seeing the willingness to listen to what they were part of and understand what it was and how it impacted both the business and themselves is definitely on the increase. So I think that education piece is definitely what's working within the areas that participated in cohort 1. But we have seen 2 of the participants in cohort 2 are colleagues of one of the participants in cohort 1. So that repeat business, if you like, is definitely there. Okay,
thank you. So you mentioned backfilling during your presentation. So there's a couple of questions around that. The first one is, how did you achieve the balance between backfilling and the benefits that the projects then ultimately bring to the organisation? So obviously there'll be, I guess, an associated cost with backfilling. So how does that balance out with the return on investment, if you like?
So we didn't do any of the backfilling for them, and the sponsor briefings, if this question's aimed around from a timing perspective, we were in touch with sponsors and potential participants very early in the piece. So the timeline, I think, was November or December last year, where we were starting the comms around it being. So there was a big lead time for that backfill to take place. It wasn't like they were scrounging and this person had just disappeared for 14 weeks. But we didn't support the business unit in that backfill. They knew that was the requirement for them, and we encouraged them to get onto it early. So I hope I've interpreted that question correctly, but that's how we approached it.
Okay, thank you. And then following on from that, in terms of backfilling, so it was 14 weeks, I think you mentioned, when junior members stepped up. Well, I know you've just said you weren't really involved in the backfilling, but how were the junior members then replaced, backfilled, or was there just people just needed to take on a little bit extra?
I dare say a little bit of both happened. Some of the people who were given higher duties were probably taking on more, or they were sharing the load across a couple. So I know that was taking place. I also know that some of the participants still did some of their day-to-day job because it was just easy to do that. But also some of their day-to-day job related to the project that they were doing. So by doing some of their day-to-day job, it wasn't against the project work. I mean, that really came down to making sure that the sponsor was on board and that the person could draw a line and focus on project as well and let go of BAU. But yeah, we didn't hear any major feedback from sponsors that was a hard thing to do. So I take that as a positive.
Good, thank you. So next one, we've got time for a couple more questions. Next one's around the coaching approach taken. How many hours roughly of coaching and training is provided by your team?
Yeah, so in this new model, so I'm involved in resourcing of our team from a project and time perspective. We've allocated half a day a week for our coaches. So the coaches so some of the staff in my team are coaching this year's cohort this round, and half a day. So what's that? 4 hours a week has been allocated to coaching. We acknowledge that might be more in the early phases and in the late phases, but that's what on average has been allocated from a coaching perspective this year.
Okay, thank you very much. And how big is your team? How many members are in the operational performance team?
Well, in the operational performance group, it's quite large. The data team is, so I would say 50. I'd say there's about 100 staff in operational performance, of which about 50 are the data team, which are not necessarily involved in this program. But across change and comms, there's probably about, if you do the sums, I'm probably not going to add up to 100. So maths has never been my strong point, but there's probably about 12 or 15 change people, change and comms staff. We've got about 25 across design and service experience. And then there's probably another, was that 25, 30, 40, and then another 10 in the project management office. So yeah, it's quite a big team, and we've grown substantially in the last 5 years. When I first jumped over the fence, to quote Sven, quoting my bio, and I will tell anybody that's what I did. We were small. There was only a handful of us, but we have seen major growth. Not all of those staff are continuing staff. Some staff are contracted to projects. From a continuing perspective, it might be 2/3 of that. I couldn't comment on the data team's continuing staff, but that's so I acknowledge that we are quite big and we've gone through some growth, but I see that as such a benefit because our Chief Executive Officer has seen great value in what we've demonstrated from a deliverable perspective, and then that's resulted in return and repeat business, which has then resulted in hiring. So it's been great for us. Busy but great.
Okay, thank you. I think half the people in the virtual webinar collapsed when I think you said 100 people in a team. They just couldn't believe that number, but I think you've quantified that quite nicely there. But yeah, there'll be a lot of envious people around the webinar about the size and scale of the operation. But it's good to see that. Listen, we've run out of time for the Q&A. There are still a few there, Stephanie, that if you have got the time you can type answers in through the Q&A. So if you're able to stay on for a little while to do that, that would be great. Just to let those on the webinar know, Stephanie has moved home recently for a year and is living right next to the beach. So we're not jealous at all. But the downside to that, if there is one, she's got a 2-hour commute for the next year. So she needs to get to her bed reasonably early, because she's up incredibly early. What time is it now? Is it 9 o'clock?
Yeah, it's 9 p.m. Yeah,
not quite bedtime.
No, not quite. It's a 2-hour commute each way, so it's 4 hours a day. So yeah, don't feel sorry for me because the beach is lovely, but yeah.
Well, listen, thank you very much indeed. Fantastic presentation, and I think the number of questions that have come in just demonstrates the interest that you've generated, and really appreciate you presenting this at 8, 9 o'clock in the evening. Very much appreciated. But hopefully it gives colleagues a flavour of what's happening, certainly in one university in Australia, to give that international context, which is absolutely fantastic. So thank you once again. And if you could hang around for a few more minutes just to respond to some of those questions, that would be fantastic. So I think we're going to head into a short break for just around about 10 minutes. We're going to reconvene at 10:15. So just to give you time to stretch your legs, grab a coffee, water, etc. And when we come back, we're going to hear from Terence. So thank you very much, and we'll see you again in a few minutes.
Hi, and welcome back to the webinar. I hope that you enjoyed that short break. And we are going to continue with the program, and I have the pleasure of introducing our next presenter, which is Terence Bos from Windesheim University of Applied Sciences. And Terence is going to give his presentation from the international conference called An Approach to Implement Continuous Improvement in Education Teams, or in Teams. And it's a special pleasure for me. I have met Terence a couple of times. And this is also goes to prove to the value of the network. I've been there with my team on an Erasmus Plus funded exchange, visiting Terence at his university, being able to see some of the work that they do by myself. So Terence is the team manager at the Logistics Management Study Program at Windesheim. And said, met a couple of times. Terence even took part in one of our community of practices, which also goes to show the relevance and the value of the network. Now, Terence has in recent years been involved in setting up the Lean team at Windesheim, and from the role as coach, as teacher, and also consultant, he helps colleagues and teams take steps in the field of continuous improvement. These steps also apply, or he applies this within the team of teachers. So it's not only a support for professional services, but also within the core industry of the university. So Terence, we look forward to hearing and seeing your presentation, and I will also just encourage you who are listening to this to continue, just write down your questions for Terence. And after your session, we will then again monitor the questions and have a Q&A session. But Terence, please, let us hear from you.
Yes, thank you for your introduction, Sven Aure. I will start with sharing my screen, so then I can talk to you the best. I think you can see my screen now, is it correct? Okay, thank you very much. Yes, good morning, everybody, or people from other parts of the world who are still here. Good evening. I'm Terence Bos. This was the starting slide for my presentation in San Diego, where we had the conference. This was a really great place. And now I am over here to give you an example of my view. This is how it looked like at the moment in the Netherlands. It's gray and there's no rain, but the weather cannot be compared to San Diego. I will first introduce myself, and then I will go to the content of the presentation. Sven Aure already told you something about me in the quote, which summarized what's my ambition is helping teams and professionals in education with continuous improvement in learning, and that's in a broad sense which I want to do. And in the yellow box is my current positions. I'm a teacher, lean coach and consultant, and the manager of the Bachelor of Logistics Management. That's a program in which we teach 250 students, and we have a team of about 20 professionals who teach these students. And also the Lean coach and consultant, that's a role in the Lean team of Windesheim. And in the Lean team are not 100 people, but there are just 9 people who are part-time in the team. And we also do some training. And the last point I want to tell about myself is that I also want to help primary and secondary education schools with continuous improvement and learning. About Windesheim, University of Applied Sciences, we have 2 locations, one in Zwolle in the Netherlands and one in Almere. We have almost 30,000 students and we have about 3,000 employees. And I think most people in Europe don't need the arrow to point out where the Netherlands is, but in America, that was really necessary. Our university has 4 departments. We have a school of economics and law. We have a school of a technical school, health sciences, and we have educational sciences. And I'm located in the economic and law school. Also, a short story about my personal life. Last year, San Diego was one of the best things which happened, but also my holiday in Italy was really great. Here you see a picture of my family and the family of a good friend of mine. And you also see the background, you see a picture of Bulgaria. That's a small village in Italy. It's between Rome and Milano. It's at the, let's see, west coast of Italy. And it's really great. And especially the Italian food is really great. And but what's really difficult for me is to pick the right food, because I love all the Italian food, but the menu helps me to pick the right food, and sometimes it's still difficult. But to stay with the menu, I want to give you also a menu, but a menu for continuous improvement. And the concept, the restaurant is called EduFlow. It has 2 words in it, edu from education, because the focus is on education, not only on support in education, but also the primary process, so the teaching of education. And in EduFlow, there's also the word of flow. And flow means that the learning for students should go smoothly. They get the right content, they get the right instructions, so they can develop them in the best way. But also flow, when you're in a flow, you're happy, you have a lot of energy. Also, that part is important, because the menu for continuous improvement is a lot about culture, not only process analysis, but a lot about culture and some kind of culture of happiness and flow. When people get the best of themselves, they can also give the best to the students. So that's why it's called EduFlow. And I will go on with the menu in a couple of minutes. But first, about the approach. I call it an approach because there are a lot of approaches, but it's a concept to implement continuous improvement in education teams, and education between brackets, because it's not necessarily limited to education teams, but I collect examples from education, and I want to share them with our community so we can inspire each other and help each other. It's some kind of a 10-step approach, and of course you can make it 20 steps or shorter. The 2 pictures are really important. In the first picture is about KISS. The concept, I really would like to keep it simple, stupid simple, or smart and simple, especially which words you like, but don't make it too complex. Especially let people apply the methods by themselves instead of they need an expert, a consultant. I try to train the people to use them by themselves. So that's why the KISS principle is on the slide. And also you see the shoes of Nike. And the slogan of Nike is just do it. I don't know how it's in other parts of the world, but at my university we make a lot of plans. And we make even more plans, and we write them down on paper and on a lot of more paper, and we have documents of 60 pages, and 2 people are reading them, and for the rest nobody reads it. And but this approach is just do it, go and experiment, because it's always positive. Or you get the right results, and if you don't get the right results, if you fail, you learn from it. So you have a learning how do you say it, a learning result, and you can use that for the future. So this is about the approach, and now we go to the session. The first question to you is to get a piece of paper so you can make some notes, or maybe you have something digitally, but if you have just a blank paper, that's enough. And you can, at the end, I'm going to ask you to share it if you want to. So it's helpful to write down your name and your email address on it. And I will go through the 10 steps and you don't have to make notes about each step, but if there is a step which is interesting for you, you can write down the step, or what is it about. You can write down what you learned from it, and especially with your learning, I mentioned what are you going to take to your own team or a team which you train. But also you can give own examples. I will give for each step a short example from my own practice. But if you have interesting examples, please write them down so we can collect them and combine them. And there is a last column. You can decide whatever you want to write down on it. And if you don't need it, you can only use 3 columns. So a good menu always starts with the starters. And the starters are smaller steps, but are really important to start your meal. I have 2 starters for you. And the first starter, which is really important, is about vision. Each university and each team should have a vision, and a vision can be about the world. What's the world going to be? What are the most important transitions in the world? But it can also be, when you look to the student, what's the next step in the career of the student? Is he or she going to another school, to another job? Do you have a vision on that? A vision on learning. How do students learn? Especially in my team, we want the students to learn by doing, so we promote that. But also on organizing and collaboration in your team. How do you want to organize your team? How do you want to collaborate together? And of course, there are some restrictions from law and regulations. But when I apply this in a team, it always starts with a vision, and I will give 2 examples. Just for the story I'm going to tell you about my own university. And at my university, this is the central strategic plan. It consists of 3 pillars: closer to the world, closer to each other, and closer to yourself. And the closer to the world pillar, it describes what are the biggest challenges in the world, which the students will come in, but also which are the important transitions to which our research has to contribute. Closer to each other is also important, especially after the COVID pandemic. I don't know how it's in your country, but our students are more isolated, are more on their own. So it's important we create communities so they can learn together as students, but also learn together with teachers and learn together with researchers and people from the business field. So closer to each other is about making communities with each other. And the last one, closer to yourself, that's about the personal learning route from a student. Everybody learns in his own pace, in his own way. So we want to create personal learning routes for students. So this is the vision of our whole university, and we translated that to a vision to our team. So this is for the logistics management team with the 20 professionals and 250 students. And of course, I understand most of you don't understand Dutch, so I will tell shortly what it's about. This is the vision of our program, and verbinden en verbeteren is above, and it means connect and improve. Logistics management is about connecting processes, connecting people, analyzing those patterns and improve them. So it's a lot about lean. And as with our team, we create a why, a how, and a what. And the why there is stated learning to change to a digital and sustainable processes in future-proof supply chains. So we want to prepare students for that. And then below on the poster, it's how we do that and what we do. And for time reasons, I won't go into that. But that's the start, and that's the first starter about the vision. When you have the vision, you can go to the next starter, and that's strategy. when you know where you want to go to, you have to create a path to it, and it's a path with a long term and short term. So it's important to create both goals for long term, which are maybe more aggregate, and short term goals, which are more concrete. But it's also important to relate company strategy to the Gemba, so to the classroom or other places where the real magic happens in education. Now, of course, create smart goals, create ownership of the goals, and it's important to facilitate improvement, especially in a team. At our university, it's normal that teachers and researchers focus on executing their job and not necessarily on improving their jobs. So when I do this with a team, I speak to the manager or the director and also have a discussion about the facilitation of improvement. If you want people to improve, you have to facilitate the time. And also here I have an example for you, that's our X matrix. Here you see the X matrix. I recommend also the book which Tammy and Bill presented at the conference in San Diego about Hoshinkanri, policy deployment in higher education. And as a team, we also make an X matrix, and in X matrix you connect the long-term goals with the short-term goals. We also make a link to the strategy of the university. But also on the right side, you see the names of all the team members, and each team member is connected to one or more goals. And for now, it's not, you don't have to read because it's in Dutch, but this is a way in which you can connect strategy to operation. You can connect top level plans to the Gemba. And also it's an overview instead of a plan of 30 pages. It's just a one-pager, which is when you walk through a building, you can see it, and the whole team is connected to it. So that was about the starters. There you see the menu. We just talked about the starters, the vision and the strategy. And starters are in practice in a restaurant are mostly small portions. So my suggestion is to pick them both. If you do continuous improvement in a team, always have a discussion about what's your vision, where do you want to go to, and also about the strategy. So how do you want to come there? Because otherwise you can create a culture of improvement, but you don't know where it's going to. Okay, after that we go to the chef specials. These are bigger portions, and this is a selection of 6 chef specials. Especially in a team where continuous improvement is new, don't apply them all to the team, just pick 1 or 2. But if you have already some in your team, you can choose the next one. And it's a selection which we apply in teams, and of course there are a lot more. Okay, the chef specials, let's start. The first chef special is visual management. Based on the vision and the strategy, you created goals with your team, and then it's important to visualize the progress on the goals, and also to make the whole PDCA cycle alive. In our practice, we do a lot of PD, plan, do, plan, do, plan, do, but we don't check and we don't act. But visual management can add value to that. We have also created a wall for learning and improvement. I will show some pictures of that. And we also create a specific kind of meeting structure to support this. The example which I'm going to show you is the OBEA of logistics management. But another example is the performance board of the Lean HE community in the Netherlands and Belgium. For time reasons, I'm not going to show that, but with our colleagues from the Netherlands and Belgium, we created some goals, and we made a performance board to show the progress on the goals. But the OBEA from the team of logistics management is this one. It suggests OBEA room, that it's a room, but it's not a room, it's in the hallway. So everybody in our university and each visitor can see this. So this is a public place, and in this public place we created for our 250 students and our team of 20 people a room, and OBEA stands for Learning and Improving Together. And also sometimes it's called a war room, from which you can create a strategy and adapt to the strategy. I will show the 4 parts in more detail now. The first part is the left part of the board of the wall. It's about the strategy, the vision, and the X matrix. If you look to the picture, you see the slides I just showed you about our university strategy in the yellow and orange fields. You see the vision of logistics management in green and blue, but you also see the X matrix, and that's available over there. The second part is about the progress of the goals. And here you see the just do it, because we started with this year. So this is not a best practice of how you should create such a board. But here we started, we have our goals on it. There's some information about the current state and the future state, and we want to visualize the progress. And at the moment, it's even better, but I didn't have the right picture with me. So if you want the best picture, please send me an email and I will show you a better photo. But at this place, we visualize the progress of the goals. Then we come to the third part, and that's about the successes. For us, it's not normal when we end the project. We normally start a new project, and after we finish that, we start a new project again. But it's important to celebrate successes. I will come back on that later. So here we also create on this wall some prizes we get about rankings or team building, but things we are proud of, or team members or students we are proud of. We place a picture. And the last part, it's about running our business. And running our business is, for logistics management, is giving classes to students, coach them in internships, do research with students. And I will come back on this later on, but especially this is our primary process. This is the place where we add value. And I will come back on that in a couple of minutes. So the fourth the fourth step, the second chef specialist, learning culture. It's important to have discussions with each other. What is learning culture? What kind of behavior do you want to see? And also to make continuous improvement part of the job of the whole team. So not only one person or only a manager does the improvement, but every team member does a part of the improvement. And like I just showed you with the X matrix, every team member is connected to a team goal. So based on that, everyone should do some kind of improvement, and it can be a lot or less, but at least everyone is contributing to it. And also about learning culture, like Stephanie also mentioned, the growth mindset is important. And for us also the self-determination theory of Ryan and Daisy is important. It's about autonomy, about relationships, and it's about competence. And these are crucial for motivation of people. What I want to show here, there are a lot of things, but for time reasons, I want to show our meeting structure. Because at our university, we have a lot of meetings, we talk a lot, and we decided we talk too much and we should do more. So we created a more simple meeting structure. And this is the meeting structure we created each week at Mondays at 8:45 till 9:30. We have a central meeting, and the rest of the week we don't have central meetings with our whole team. So just 45 minutes each week. And we have a cycle. In the first week, we talk about all kind of things which are related to running the business. Every team member can give item which should be on the agenda. The second week, in week B, we talk about improving the businesses. Each team member will work in a subgroup on the team goals, which are connected to the subgroup. The third week, week C, then we talk again about running the business. So if there's something with a student or there's something from the management we should discuss, it can always be on the agenda. And one of the most important things is week D. Then we have the meeting in our Obeya room. So the photos I just showed you, in week D, we are with our team of 20 people in the Obeya room. That's a non-digital meeting, so everybody is present physically. The other ones are more hybrid, so people also use Teams or other kind of ways to digitally connect. But in week D, we are physically present, and then we update the team about the progress on the team goals. We give feedback on the updates, and if subgroups have other questions, they can also give feedback on that. And we discuss the student evaluations of our courses. For example, one important thing is to attract new students. When you look to the population of the Netherlands, we see there are the young people is getting smaller, and the older people are the part of the population is getting bigger. So it's important for us to attract new students. So a part of my team is busy with that, and they give updates on that, and we give feedback. For example, they say we should give workshops at secondary education. How should we do that? We have these 3 options. Please give feedback on that. Such kind of things we discuss with each other. So this is one part of how to create a culture to give a meeting structure which adds value to the continuous improvement and don't gives us too much time for irrelevant discussions. Close look to the clock, 11:40 already. Leadership is important. For me, it's especially about servant leadership. Make sure as a leader that the team can execute their work. Everybody's happy that improvement is on track. So, and lead by example. If you want people, give people the opportunity to make mistakes and learn from them. You also have to make sometimes mistakes as a leader and tell stories about it and what you learned from that. Then that's also to stimulate learning and experimenting. And now for this, based on the time, I will go a little faster. I think this one is important. We have a fit cycle for each team member, and fit stands for the Dutch words functioneren, inzet en toekomst. And in English, it means functioning, about how someone is functioning, about the work plan. So what is your plan for the coming half year? And about the future, what do you want in the long run? And each team member makes a year plan, and in that plan there are personal goals, but also team goals. What are you going to add to the team goals? We have a talk about preferred changes in work, but also on the education, which somebody needs. And for me, it's important to customize the meetings with all the team members. There are members in my team who want such a talk once a year, but also there are people who want talk about it each month. So I try to differentiate in that. The next one is personal development. We want to improve the processes and our education, but we also want to improve ourselves. And we use CADA for that. In San Diego, I also gave a workshop about CADA coaching and about Buddy CADA. I will tell something short about it in a minute. But it's important in a learning and continuous improvement culture that you develop yourself. And especially learning on the job is, there are a lot of opportunities to learn more from that, because each day we do a lot, but do we have time to reflect on that? And if we create more reflection, we can learn a lot. And with Buddy CADA, that's possible. And I have a short slide about that. Buddy CADA, CADA coaching has 2 routines. One routine for improvement. It's about what's your challenge and how do you want to receive the challenge. and you have the coaching kata. The coaching kata are these 5 questions. And I introduced the buddy kata in my team, and then you connect 2 people in the team with each other. And they are both coach and coachee. So in one role, you are the coach and your colleague is the coachee, and the coachee has a challenge, and you are going to ask these 5 questions to your colleague, and your colleague gives answers and reflects on that and determines what's the most important next step. And you see also the clock with 50 minutes. You can do that in 50 minutes each 2 weeks. And after those 50 minutes, you change the roles. Then the coachee becomes the coach, and the coach becomes the coachee, and the other one is asking questions to each other. So this is a simple method. On paper, at least it's simple. When you start experimenting with it and asking the questions, sometimes it's more difficult than you expect. But you have the focus on your challenge, and each time you have the best next step, and each time you have an important reflection. So the people in my team who are doing this have each 2 weeks have the best next step for themselves and an important reflection, so they can grow in their personal development. Another one is data-driven. At our school, it's not normal at every place to use data to improve. And especially when you are going to look to the schedules, you hear a lot of complaints. The schedules aren't right, and there are a lot of how do I say that? The students always think the schedule can be better. And when I ask our planner, he tells me that teachers always deliver the input too late, but it's all there is no data about it. So I stimulate to collect data, so you can make analysis on the data and give feedback on it. And here I want to show our student journey, which you already saw in the picture of the Obeya room. We collect data on all our courses. So here you have a dashboard. We created this in Power BI. And in this dashboard, this is the semester of the 4th year, the first half year. And here you see scores about how content students are, about testing, about choices they can make, about the content of the study, about the learning, how much they've learned, about the teachers, about the practice, about the atmosphere in the education. And we discuss these numbers with our team. So these numbers, we can see if it's based on the previous year, if there is an improvement or not. But most important, we do not only discuss these numbers, but we also create improvement actions. So in this table, it's again in Dutch, but in the second column, you see vakken, that means courses. There you see courses, for example, the first one is the course about change management. And the teacher from that course has analyzed the previous course and made some improvement actions. And where you see the verbeter actie 1, verbeter actie 2, verbeter actie 3, there he defined the improvement actions. So in this way, we gather data about our courses, we analyze it, the most important things we discuss with the whole team, and based on that, we create improvement actions, and it's all in the system, so we can find them back. The last one of the chef specials is Kaizen, because a lot of these things is about continuous improvement in the whole team, and it's really decentralized. But sometimes there are bigger problems, and for these bigger problems, you have to create a separate project. And I always I always name it. You want to boost an improvement, and I think a lot of people in our network know Kaizen, know brown paper sessions. But when we have bigger problems, we do such kind of projects. And this is a SIPOC analysis. But I don't want to go into that for now because I see the time is running. We have talked about the starters, for which my advice is choose them both. We have the chef specials. From that you can pick which ones you think are important. You can add other ones to it. But I think you're curious about the dessert because it's always one of the best things. And yeah, I also have something for you from that. The first one I already mentioned a bit is about successes. It's important, like Kool and the gang already created a song about celebrate good times. So especially as a leader or as a consultant, make sure that people celebrate their successes. And even in a project, short-term success is important because some projects, at least I saw in Stephanie's presentation, it are projects of 14 weeks. For us, it are almost projects of 20 weeks and sometimes even longer. To get everybody on track, it's important to celebrate them and give the short-term successes. And in a team, it can make people proud, people feel appreciated, and it will give some positive energy. Like I already showed you in our Obeya room, yeah, we print things out and put them on the wall. But you also see a poster, and this is a poster from an improvement traject. No, that's not the right word. No, a year program which we did at the support staff of education. And with that stuff, you can see at the plan, we created an X matrix with them. At the do, we created a performance board. And when you look in the purple box, there are the results. So after 1 year, we stated what are the most important results. But also in the green, what are the lessons learned, the most important ones. So we helped them by making this poster, and which they can put on the wall so they visualize and can celebrate their successes. And then the last dessert is continuous improvement. It's important always also celebrate good times. It's not the right thing. It's keep on moving should be there. The world keeps changing, so you have to be more agile as an organization. And also practice what you preach, or our favorite quote is practice what you teach. Keep learning, keep growing, and make sure which trends are relevant and connect them to your education. And examples for me is especially to facilitate the PDCA to PDCA. So after we run a project or do something, make sure that it keeps on moving. And that's what I showed here. So for me as a leader in my team, I really want after each act that we make a new plan and connect to that. And leading by example, I want to get connected and learn. So especially when I was in San Diego, but also now at the HE Encore, I really want to share information and collect new information so we can all learn together. And I hope every team member in my team will also do this. So I know it was a bit of a rush. I talked a lot, but we have seen the whole menu about from the starters to the dessert, the chef specials. And now my question to you is, you have written down some things, and if you think it's not useful to share, it's not necessary, but if you have some interesting own examples from one or more of the steps, I really appreciate it if you want to share them with me. I will collect them and I will make an overview and I will share that with you later on. So if possible, please make a photo of your paper and mail me or message me. My email address and phone number are on this slide. And yeah, I'm really curious about your ideas about this. So here's the menu again, and we have still 5 minutes left for some questions.
Thank you so much, Terence, for your presentation. And let me just start off a question session by just stating it's great to see such a structured way for a team, a education team, to work on continuous improvement. And I know for sure that at our university that would be needed in many teams. Not that we don't create learning cultures, but to do this in a so structured manner. So there are a few questions. The first one is quite practical. In the 4-week meeting structure that you talked about, is there an agenda for each of the 4 meetings?
Yeah, there is an agenda for the running the business meetings. It's just a Word document, a shared file in which every team member can write down items for the agenda. For the OBEA meeting, we have a standard agenda. So we look to the update on the update on the strategic goals, then the update on the year goals, and then we go to the student evaluations.
Thank you. Just to make sure that there are a few comments as well. It's not a question, but people like the metaphor that you are using. So maybe people are inspired also to go to Italy. Are other parts of the university using the EduFlow practice?
Yeah, we started this at the support staff, but not from specifically this model, but we start creating an X matrix with a team. And it's important to visualize goals. So we did all kind of experiments, and it come together in the EduFlow concept. And we firstly did it at other teams, but then we had a discussion with our own team. We should do it by ourselves too. Practice what you preach. So we started in our own team by doing this. But especially you see when you look to the chef specials, it's always different which ones a team applies.
Thank you. There are a couple of questions regarding the X matrix. You mentioned a lot the X matrix. Is that based on a model? And would you recommend any resources to read on X matrix?
Yeah, especially the book from the conference, the Hoshin Kanri book from Bill Balzer and Tammy Sheena. There's a lot about the X matrix and more on that. To my opinion, the X matrix is really helpful because you can link the top strategy to the work floor together. You can connect people to goals, and it's all on one page instead of a huge document where it's all in and you have to read about it. And there are a lot of formats for it. I have formats, so if anybody needs a format, they can send me an email and I can share them. Yeah, for me, it's really helpful. And in the teams where we work, it really gives a focus to the team on what's important.
Thank you. So the model here, the wider model is called Hoshin Kanri, and you're encouraged to, and we will put the name of that book in the Q&A section as well, so that people could easily get access to that book. And also, there's a follow-up on that. How do you find that people understand the X matrix when they are first introduced to it?
Yeah, that's important. It's based on their knowledge. If I'm in a consulting role or coaching role, I really want to facilitate the process in filling it and asking questions. But what's on it? It should be on the manager or the director who's responsible. It really depends on the people you have, because I use an Excel file. In our organization, we have people who love Excel and work on it each day, and we have people who don't know how they can fill in an extra column or something. So it really depends on the people you have, but some support is needed, and also to ask questions. For example, how is this year goal related to a long-term goal? If there's no relation, should it be on the X matrix? And especially people want to mention a lot of goals. So if you have 20-year goals, that's far too much. For sure, you are going to reach a lot of them, but also a lot not. So it's better to get more focus on that.
Thank you. I will just briefly mention that we have one of the editors slash authors of the book. Tammy seen her here, and she has also put a direct link to the book here. So as it was mentioned, so that's fine. And there's also a mention of would love to see a template here. So maybe there's a way to share a template on that, and we'll see. And I see there's a lot of interest around the X matrix in the Hoshin Kanri, and we could also probably divert people to some of the online resources that are here also through the Lean HE Europe network. To cap off this section of the webinar, we are going to enter into a short break, but I have one question as well, Terence, and it's just about the Obeya room, the war room, or the room where you have all your details, all the strategic stuff, but also the measurements about how is it going with your education. Was there any kind of reaction to the members on displaying this publicly? I mean, I've been at your place, I've seen your Obeya room, I can see that students are walking around and everybody could go up and see all these measurements. Has there been any kind of discussion on that?
Yeah, there is a discussion, because you have to, upfront, you have to think about what information is public and what information isn't public. For example, to score a teacher, that's not on the wall, only the whole teaching team. So after a whole semester, students can grade the teaching team. So if they really hate the whole teaching team, then you can see it, and then we have a problem as a team. But you cannot see the classes from Terence Boss. I really hated it, and he's a bad teacher, so he has a low grade. So such things we've talked about, what do we want to share and what not, and especially the improvement actions. Those are not available on the wall. Those are in the Power BI application, and therefore you need a computer to zoom into it. So that's available for the whole team, but not for as you are running through our building, you cannot see them.
So thank you so much, Terence, for sharing your experience with this and for taking the time to share this again. And now we'll head into a short break before we head on to the next guest in our program, which will come from another side of the globe in the US. So I will do the same thing again. I will share a timer with you. We do a 5-minute short break to make sure that people could take care of any kind of business that you need, and then we'll be back. See you in 5.
Welcome back, everyone. We are now moving on to our third presentation of the morning, and it's my great pleasure to introduce to you Krista Schulte and Colin Moore from the University of Michigan. So at the beginning of this morning, we had Stephanie from Melbourne, and it was 8-9 o'clock in the evening for Stephanie. For Krista and Colin, a different kind of perspective for them. It's I think 7 minutes past 6 in the morning, I think, at the moment for Krista and Colin. So lots of coffee to keep them going. And it's an absolute thrill to have you here, and thank you so much for making the time so early in the morning to present to us. So Krista leads Organizational Excellence, a program at the University of Michigan, offering consulting, coaching, training, and a community of practice to help staff, students address issues and uncover new possibilities. Krista joined the university in 2015 from Visteon Corporation, where she served as a lean advisor to global product development teams for over 10 years. And prior to that, she applied lean at Visteon and Ford in different engineering, process leadership, and operations roles. And Krista is also currently the chair of Lean HE Americas. I've known Krista since, I think, 2015. Again, one of the great things about this network is you can make lasting connections from across the world and learn from each other, share with each other what you do and how you do it. So I would absolutely encourage you to take advantage of that opportunity. And then chatting to Krista, I think about a year or so ago, we were talking about what could we do in between international conferences to help build and maintain momentum. And I explained to Krista the concept of Lean HE Encore, and it's Krista, I have to give the credit of coming up with the name, because she said it's an encore of the presentation, so let's call it Lean HE Encore. So that's why we're here today, a combination of having those conversations. So that's Krista. Colin is a senior operational improvement consultant at Michigan, and Colin has a proven track record of creating efficient processes and strategies that drive operational transformation and success. He has successfully overseen the university's Shared Services Centre Lean programme and led valuable consulting engagements, earning the respect of his colleagues and clients. Colin's experience in coaching is highly regarded, and he has guided numerous individuals through problem-solving labs, empowering them to advance their ideas through to implementation. Colin's commitment to knowledge sharing is evident in his leadership of the League of Lean Leaders and his efforts to foster the adoption of lean practices across the Shared Services Centre. So, as I said, I'm very grateful to Krista and Colin for joining us today. There'll be an opportunity, similar to previous sessions, to ask Krista and Colin questions. They're going to speak to us today about leadership matters, which leader matters the most in delivering lean results. And I will end by saying, and this will mean something to Colin and Krista, go blue.
Thanks, John. Good morning, everybody. Really excited to be here. I really appreciate the invitation. So we feel very honored to be here. We will be drinking coffee along the way to help us wake up a little bit. So let's jump into this presentation. Thanks, Colin. Colin and I I'll just warn you, Colin and I are going to be trading back and forth at some point with our screen sharing, helping each other out, and fingers crossed for a smooth transition there. So our presentation is called Leadership Matters. We have talked a lot about leaders in this lean community and their impact. But we want to bring a new angle. We want to talk about which leader we think matters the most in delivering lean results. Colin and I did an analysis a few years ago that we're really hoping will add another dimension to this conversation. Colin, if you could go ahead and advance the slide one for me. Thank you. So the three things we're going to touch on is, first, we're going to talk about the problem. What were we facing? What led to this whole conversation that we're going to be talking about today? We're going to share with you the investigation we did. I mean, it was a mystery. We really had no idea what was happening. So we did an investigation. We're going to walk through our analysis with you. And finally, we're going to share our discoveries. I think these were very surprising to us, and hope that they're surprising and interesting to you. So with that, I'm going to pass it back to Colin.
All right, thanks, Kristen. So as we begin our presentation this morning, we'd like to understand the views of you, the audience that we're speaking to, on two specific questions related to leadership. So I'll invite you to share some of your answers with Menti in a minute, but I first want to set the stage for the questions that we have for you. So the first question that we're interested in understanding is what you think the most important behavior for effective leadership is in an organization. And this is open-ended. The second question that we're curious about are your views on what you believe is the most impactful level of leadership within an organization, based on three different levels. So do you think the most impactful level of leadership is a frontline supervisor? So someone who is responsible for overseeing individuals directly involved with the basic level of operations. So this person would supervise individuals closest to the work being done. Or do you believe that the most impactful leader is a mid-level manager, the supervisor's immediate superior? Often could be a manager or director. And finally, do you believe that the executive representing the highest level of leadership within an organization holds the most impact? So for example, it could be a dean, vice president, or a chancellor. So with that, please take a moment, grab your mobile device, scan the QR code, or if you're on your laptop or computer, you can type in the code at the bottom there, 4421-1431, and visit menti.com to provide your answers. And I'll wait a few moments before we dive into what you shared. Okay, let's see. Questions here, waiting for responses to come through. All right, so we can start with the second question. So what is the most impactful level of leadership? So right now, looks like the mid-level manager is taking the lead here. The first time we've seen that come up as like the most impactful level of leadership. So that's very interesting. Let's see here if we have a word cloud that's working for us this morning. Oh, there it goes. And now it's generating. All right, so as far as the behaviors that you think are most important or for good leadership, so transparency, definitely in the center there, support, integrity, honesty, humility, empathy, great attributes. So some of these, I think we will be sharing a little bit more on as we go along with this presentation with some of our findings in our research. So this is great. This definitely helps us kind of steer our conversation later on. And I appreciate you for sharing your thoughts. So taking a step back and kind of setting the stage a little bit more, prior to the pandemic, my primary role involved supporting approximately 30 different teams at the University of Michigan Shared Services Center, as John mentioned earlier. I help them make improvements in their work and identify possibilities that they can pursue. So I served as an embedded coach, and I would visit and work with those various teams in the finance, HR, and even operational support at the Shared Services Center once a month. But so during my observations of the teams, during their daily stand-ups, meetings, and general interactions, I focus on 4 key areas to assess. The first area that I examined were how teams measured their work and whether they were utilizing metrics to understand the impacts of their work on themselves and for their customers. Second, I would assess the effectiveness of their communication amongst one another, with their leaders, and again, with their customers. We'll try to understand how they were approaching problem solving, whether they were simply identifying problems without taking action, or were they actively pursuing solutions to improve their processes. And finally, I wanted to understand the leadership impact that we're talking about today. So I evaluated how team members interacted with their leaders, those supervisors and mid-level managers, and how leaders influenced team dynamic overall. So based on my observations of these 4 different elements, I categorized teams using a simple green, yellow, red metric to help indicate how they were doing overall. So to understand the green, yellow, red metric a little deeper, there are some attributes that we categorize among all 3 of them. So in general, green teams demonstrated a strong grasp of the behaviors and mindset that we were looking for to promote across the university. In essence, they got it. They served as our model teams. So we would showcase these teams to others interested in continuous improvement work including colleagues at other institutions like you all. The yellow teams, on the other hand, were generally inconsistent. While they may have moments of excellence, they also experience periods of stagnation. So their behaviors and mindsets fluctuated. One visit, they were bursting with momentum and ideas. The next, it was like pulling teeth, trying to understand what they were trying to improve. And then finally, the red teams are those who do not embrace, understand, or actively pursue improvement on a regular basis. So unlike the green or yellow teams, there's little to no desire within the team as a whole to adopt the necessary mindset and behaviors that we believe would be beneficial. Even if individuals within the team showed overall or occasional flashes of understanding and motivation, they unfortunately were overshadowed by the prevailing negative culture of resistance to improvement. So you may resonate with some of these teams or have experience, working with groups like these where you're at. So this metric is what we actually use to monitor our progress over time. And it illustrates the state of affairs of those 30-some teams at the Shared Services Center over an 18-month period. Initially, there was some progress in increasing the number of green teams overall through coaching. But however, this progress was countered by some teams regressing into red. Also important to note that most of the teams actually stayed in the same place. Some teams consistently remain green, others remain stagnant in yellow or red. So we, myself, particularly put a lot of effort into coaching and supporting these teams, and the lack of transformation and mobility from red to yellow to green prompted us to ask that ever important question, why? So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Krista to elaborate a little bit more on our situation.
All right. So to take this over, I think, Colin, you need to stop screen sharing. There we go. Thank you. And I'll pick up from there. So as Colin was saying, we struggled for some time. You can see this is a year and a half of effort coaching these teams. We tried many different approaches. We kept varying, maybe this will work, maybe that will work. And as you can see, we weren't really making significant progress. And we got to the place where really, what are we going to do? What's next? We can't just keep putting this much effort in and not getting a significant return on that effort. So the next question, I mean, we really had to make a decision. What are we going to do? Was it worth trying something else? And finally, we kind of settled on this question was, does it matter? Does it really matter if a team isn't green? I mean, we certainly came into this believing that it mattered, but we'd never really looked at the data to understand this goal we were pursuing. Was it worth getting there? And we couldn't answer that question. And so we said, we really need to start with that. We need to start there, because why put in all this effort if it just doesn't matter in the long run? If a team is green or yellow, maybe they're all fine. And really by fine, I mean, what we're looking for is we're looking for these teams to be doing continuous improvement, to be creating innovations, to be making progress, because the entity that we work for, the Shared Services Center, has a responsibility to the rest of the university to make improvements and help how our business is getting done. So we decided if we're going to do this investigation, we really need to start with what's our hypotheses here. So the first one, we believe green teams produce more innovation than yellow or red. That's our starting point. Green teams are in fact doing better. Our second hypothesis is something we'd heard so many times in different places. Top-level leadership is a key contributor. It's essential for the success of these teams. So this was our starting point. We set out to understand this. We decided to pull together all the data we could find to understand what is it telling us about the improvements that these green, yellow, and red teams were or were not making. And you'll see that each step in our analysis took us another layer deeper as we were learning things along the way. So let's jump into the first thing that we found. So first, the most basic thing we needed to understand was how many teams are green, how many teams are red. So this was our starting point. We found out that only 40% of our teams were actually green. Even this was a bit of a surprise to us because we never really looked at the data this way. We'd been used to using the metric. But putting it on a slide this way and really thinking about it, we're like, wow, the majority of our teams are actually yellow. That's interesting. So the next thing we wanted to understand is, what do the improvements look like? We've been capturing all the data in a system we call our innovation index. Really, it just leads to, it's a way to input what they had accomplished, and it gives us a Tableau report. So we could see very clearly what the teams were doing. And here's what it looked like. All of these little X's, these little improvements, each X represents an improvement that was done. So we were finding that the green teams, you can see how many more X's they have. This smaller group is actually producing twice as many improvements. You can see 1.1 per person compared to 0.5 per person. The green team is producing twice as many improvements each year, which was a shock to us. It was like, oh my gosh, they're so much more prolific with this. So then we thought to ourselves, okay, wait, they may be more active, they may be producing more improvements, but what do the results look like? Are they just busy? Are they small things that they're doing on a regular basis? Or like, what kind of impact are they really making? What are the benefits we're getting out of this work? So the next thing we did was we looked at the hours they were actually saving. And we binned it in 3 different categories. And yes, you'll see the screen is very, very green. The green bars represent the amount of total savings that those green teams were creating. So just in a glance, you can see that their efforts, the actual results they're getting, are dwarfing what the yellow teams are doing. So in this first category, this is called customer hours saved. What the green teams were doing here was that they were reaching out to the customer and they were finding ways to make it easier for our customers to interact. They were actually saving time for the customer during all of our interactions. Oops, sorry. The second one is taking on the customer's work. Sometimes if they couldn't find a way to save the time for the customer, they would offer to just take on the work for the customer for free. They would just say, hey, would you like us to do that for you? It seems kind of like a hassle for you. We could take that off your plate. And this represents all the savings, all the times they did that. The third category is called team hours saved. And this is when the team is looking inward to their own processes and making improvements there so they're more effective internally. And you can see this is where the yellow team shows up. They've got 36%. And what we notice about that is, in some ways we think about that's the bar that's like, it's all about me. What's in it for me? How can I improve my own work? So that was a dramatic finding to us that the green teams that are doing so well are strongly focused on our customer. The yellow teams, they're making improvements, but mostly for themselves. There's hardly any customer focus at all. So we feel like we answered our first question, which is, does it matter if a team is green? And we realized it matters a lot. It matters a lot. So the next thing we tried to understand is like, what do we know about these green teams? What makes a team green? We don't understand it. All we know is they are green and we're seeing good things, but we don't know, why can't we coach a yellow team to get there? What's different here? So we thought, is it about the size of the team? Maybe there's like a right size that's gonna help a team be more effective. But when we tried to look, we looked at the sizes of the green and yellow teams, we could find no correlation, no relationship at all between whether they were green and how big the team was. So that wasn't it. Like, okay, what else? What else? What about the leader, the top level leader, right? That's supposed to be making a huge difference. But what we realized here is that our executive leader was giving the same support to every team. One thing she did was she had a leadership walk with every single team where she would meet with the team on a regular cadence. She would give them support, talk about what they needed, encourage them. She's doing this for every team. That's the same, no difference. We also know they're getting the same coaching. Colin's efforts, he met with every team, gave them all the same encouragement, support, coaching. That's the same. So it's not that. We continue to look. What else is going on? So we said, all right, what about the supervisors, those frontline leaders? We know about those people. So this is where our analysis started to get very interesting. We found that if the frontline supervisor was green, in other words, they're doing all of these great behaviors, positive behaviors that we would hope to see in any good leader, but particularly when we're talking about lean improvements, if the frontline supervisor was green, 70% of those teams were green. Very strong relationship. And then we found that if the frontline supervisor was yellow or red, none of the teams were green. None of them. This was such a sharp difference. We're like, okay, here's where something's really happening now. And really our takeaway from this was pretty depressing. Like, no matter how good your team is, they can't overcome a bad supervisor. They really just cannot overcome it. And to us, that was just a profound finding. We also noticed in our data, we could see that if this green frontline supervisor, if this person left and a new supervisor came in who was exhibiting yellow or red behaviors, the team followed. The team would also turn yellow or red. And the converse was true. If you had a yellow or red supervisor and they were replaced by a green supervisor, the team turned green. It wasn't the team. You know, I hear so many leaders complain about, well, my team's just not motivated. My team won't engage. It's not the team. When we change the supervisor, the team suddenly starts performing. So what else do we know? What about these mid-level managers? The next level up. What's happening there? What's their effect? So we looked at this a different way. We said, okay, we know that the teams that are making the most improvements, the very active teams, are putting in all kinds of ideas. 88% of those of our top teams have green supervisors. So we knew that. We knew the green supervisors were helping these teams be very effective. But what's the mid-level manager doing? What's their effect on the team? Like, I wish I could see everyone to ask this question and hear your answers, but are the mid-level managers green? Are they yellow? Are they red? What we found, which I can't tell you how much this surprised us, didn't matter. It didn't matter. It had absolutely no effect. We saw red, yellow, and green mid-level managers. Nothing could stop this green supervisor. They were just chug, 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 like the little train that could. And they were just like, we're doing this, we're doing this. So we thought, okay, wait, let's look at this another way. We've talked about activity. They're doing a lot of improvements. But what if we look at results? We looked at the teams that had generated the most savings. And we found that the majority of those teams had green managers. So a bad manager isn't going to stop a good team. But if you have a green frontline supervisor and you put a mid-level manager with them, you're going to see enormous results. These teams they were producing savings that were 4 to 5 times larger than other teams. Like it was just on a different scale. It's kind of like you have a good supervisor and suddenly you have somebody behind them encouraging them, breaking down obstacles, helping them do things they didn't think they could do. It was an incredible partnership. So that's where we found, okay, you can't stop a green supervisor, but you sure can encourage them and help them do even more. So in the end, what we found is it's really all coming back to that frontline supervisor. The mid-level manager has a potential. They're not going to stop the supervisor completely. They have the potential to help, but they're not absolutely necessary. And we found that the top level executive, not so much of an impact. So with that, I'm going to hand this back to Colin to tell you a little bit more about what were those frontline supervisors doing? What was so impactful in their activities?
Okay, so thanks, Krista. So now that we know, as Krista mentioned, that it all comes back to that frontline leader or supervisor, we wanted to kind of reflect on what those positive behaviors of those green supervisors were. So what were those common attributes that influenced all of their teams to excel with continuous improvement? So the first I want to point out was delegation. So those effective supervisors delegated tasks and empowered their team to take charge of the improvement effort. So they also acknowledged and appreciated their individual differences of team members and their own leadership style. Every leader had their own style and approach, but they all avoided micromanagement and monopolizing initiatives. Like they let their staff take control. They were supportive. They offered guidance when needed without being, again, controlling. They created an environment where individuals were welcome to contribute their ideas and take initiative. They actively removed obstacles, as Krista mentioned, and provided resources for their staff to succeed their sought-after improvements. But above all, these supervisors would be able to boost the confidence of their team, motivate them towards excellence, and celebrate those successes when they had them. Conversely, we want to look at those negative behaviors, like what were holding teams back. So there's numerous negative behaviors that I observed that we want to warn you against when trying to cultivate that culture of continuous improvement. So one common negative behavior was that the leaders showed general disinterest in making improvements. They were completely fine with the status quo. So obviously this is a huge hindrance, but again, needs to be stated. Another negative aspect were supervisors who were often inaccessible to their teams. They're preoccupied with larger initiatives or distractions, and again, they failed to delegate ownership to their teams. Consequently, these teams lack clear targets and goals to motivate them to be better on their own. And when issues inevitably did arise, supervisors tended to, again, revert back to micromanagement instead of trusting their teams to work through an issue, which then further eroded that team dynamic. So in essence, these supervisors weren't leading from the front and bringing people along with them. Now, what about those mid-level managers? the people that the supervisors would report to, as Krista mentioned earlier, that if you had great mid-level managers in addition to green supervisors, it was like a firestorm of innovation. So despite being a level removed from the frontline supervisors and 2 levels from the teams, these managers remained present, engaged and supported them in the improvement efforts that they were striving for. They showed interest in the work without, again, imposing directives or dictating. They were able to maintain a balance between involvement and delegation. They exhibit a proactive attitude toward improvement, driving teams forward and motivating them again toward progress. And finally, as a good leader does, they help their teams align their actions with the overall organizational goals, and we're not hesitant to challenge the status quo. Again, aiming for meaningful change wherever it could be made. Now, there may be other behaviors that are important, but again, these are the ones that we know are vital to continuous improvement efforts of an organization. So again, with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Krista to revisit and reflect our hypothesis again and kind of close us out.
So kind of coming back to this, you know, we started out thinking green teams produce more innovation. They really do. We confirm that is in fact true. We felt very confident saying that we knew this was a goal worth pursuing. But as for the next one, top level leadership is a key contributor to innovation. What we found is that we're going to give the answer as a resounding, well, maybe. I think people often look to this leader. This is the leader that's often providing funding for a continuous improvement effort. And so this leader's topmost in our mind. But what we found is that this leader is really, they're just too far away from the front action to have a huge impact. Yes, it's important. We're not denying, of course, they're the ones that are saying, yeah, we'll give you some funding to try this whole lean thing. But the analogy I've been thinking about is they're a lot like sunlight shining on a garden. It's important, but you can grow a garden full of flowers, or with that same sunlight, you can grow a garden full of weeds. The difference maker is that frontline supervisor. They're the gardener. They're tilling the soil, and by that, I mean they're helping to create a positive culture. They're pulling the weeds. They're watering regularly. Their impact is enormous on the success of any kind of continuous improvement program. And one of the reasons I really wanted to talk about this presentation, the idea is that I think we focus too much on that high-level leader and worrying about that. But you know what? If we're not working with that amazing frontline supervisor and making those continuous improvement results, pretty soon that high-level leader isn't really going to be interested in giving you funding anymore. You really want to focus on finding partners, good gardeners for your partners. Look for those positive behaviors. So that's kind of, to us, that was a really important finding. We're not trying to dispute that the top level leadership isn't important, but if you're looking to create some results, you've really got to look for that frontline leadership. So just kind of like stepping back to look at the key takeaways from our whole investigation. When you're thinking about those frontline gardeners, as I think of them, all of them have their own style, and that's good. There's no one style that works, but look for those positive behaviors, the ones that are really enabling their staff and creating that culture where improvements and improvement ideas can really flourish. Again, remember, teams of good leaders delivered twice the improvements as other teams, and the impact, the actual benefits, were 4 to 5 times higher. So we just want to say, if you're a practitioner and you're looking to find a group to work with, choose your partner carefully. We've had many partners over time in our program who were not good gardeners. And I can just tell you, you're going to have a very difficult time making progress, showing demonstrated, having people adopt these methods, showing results. It is really tough going. And finally, we feel like you don't always have to wait on executive leadership. You can make a difference just looking for that motivated frontline leader. We think that is really the key to making positive change. And with that, I think we're ready for questions. Thank you again for letting us share our story with the group. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Krista. Could I ask you to stop sharing your screen, please? Thank you. And that way we can see, well, unfortunately you can still see me, but we can see Krista and Colin in terms of answering the question. So not that you could see it, but I was nodding furiously throughout the entire presentation. I thought got some great insights there, and that's reflected in the Q&A. There's some comments that aren't questions, but just you know, very, very positive about the work that you've done, the findings, and just how fascinating an insight it is. I'll try and get through as many questions as I can, but just one, hopefully fairly simple one. I think one of the attendees has kind of may have missed this at the start, but when did you start doing this investigation, and what time period does it cover?
So I can take that one. So I first started mid-2018, and I believe this assessment goes through the end of 2019. So right before the pandemic started.
Excellent, thank you.
So John, if you're wondering why it's 2024, like why have we been waiting on this story for so long? And I think that comes back to me. I think I couldn't go to one more conference where people were talking about the high-level leader and how they couldn't move forward without that high-level leader. And I was just like, that's it, Colin, we're gonna show our story and help people. Like, I feel like just get going. And so that's why I just was motivated to talk about what we did to help people know that.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I think it's a good point to make, because similarly, I've heard that a lot as well, and it's not dismissing that it is important, but I think the way you described it in terms of sunlight and flowers and weeds, I think is a great way to think about that. You know, if it's not there, it could be an issue, but it's you know, it's not the be all and end all, as it were. So yeah, absolutely. In terms of it, so I guess the team's performance, so green, yellow, red, I guess there's a couple of things here, and there's one of the questions, I'm going to kind of expand on it a little bit. So did you use clear definitions from what differentiated between green, yellow, and red? And so, and I'm assuming the answer is yes, but I'm sure you're going to tell us what they are. And the bit I'm going to add on, did the teams themselves know that?
Mm-hmm. So I can try to take both of those. So when I first started, obviously trying to stay as objective as possible and treating each team the same way was definitely important. I believe I started out with kind of a scale like 1 to 5 on certain criteria that we were looking at. So those 4 elements that I had shared, there were some deeper things that went into each of those. I won't go into, but those are just kind of 4 of the high level, I guess, snapshot of what I was looking at. So it was important for us to stay objective in there, but again, over time, it was noticeable that teams and supervisors they weren't moving, they weren't migrating from red to yellow to green. And John, what was the second part of that question?
Did the teams know the criteria you were judging them on?
Somewhat, yes, they did. So part of this, the evaluation was our daily management system, which comprised different components that I mentioned. So they knew what that daily management system consisted of, but overall they did not know how I was scoring them necessarily, like individually. We wanted to keep that anonymous.
Okay.
I'll add that I think the teams always knew, because when Colin was coaching them, he would say, okay, these areas are fantastic. These other two areas, we want to see you work on this. Here's maybe a goal to work towards. So they knew really clearly which areas they needed to work on strengthening.
Okay, thank you. Now, I think that this is all good questions, but I like this one in terms of the teams that you're working with. Were they all kind of working in similar areas or types of activity? For example, frontline student services, or were their types of work different? Which, did that have any impact at all? So the type of work that it did that make any difference?
I'm not sure if we looked that closely in the data. My gut would say maybe. One thing I do notice, so at the service center, so we have finance teams, human resource teams, and then those operational support teams. Within those, I feel like there were certain elements that majority of those teams would perform a little bit better in. So the human resource teams would be better maybe like at customer service and communication piece versus finance teams, which would be good at more the data collection and more impact as far as innovation goes and understanding that. So but as far as hard data around that, no, we did not look at that.
Thank you. And a question, is this linked to the viral change approach? And this particular person who asked the question found that the bottom-up approach worked very well at Southampton University in the UK. So is it linked to the viral change approach? My advice to you is, if you don't know what that means, I would just say yes.
Yes, it absolutely is. No, I don't know what the vital change approach, but I would say this really was a bottom-up approach, working with the teams, helping them move forward. So it may be related, definitely bottom-up. Okay,
and a slightly different question, but an interesting one. So with you working at University of Michigan, do you get any access to Jeffrey Leiker and his research into lean leadership?
So, well, he is retired now. Have to put that out there. I think we could have. I never have. I will say he was my professor a million years ago. He is the person that inspired me to spend my career doing this. But I feel like most of his work is focused on the automotive sector and based on the learnings from Toyota. And I don't know that I've seen him write a lot about higher ed and applying this in a different kind of setting. But that just could be, I might have missed it. There might be something out there now.
Okay, which takes me into another question, because I'm going to jump ahead one actually, because another, it's not really a question, but well, it is, I guess. This person would love to see your findings in a paper. Have you, or would you consider publishing your findings? Because I think the feeling is it'd be very helpful.
Thank you. Actually, Bill Balzer did, he also encouraged me, and he's offered some resources to help me get started on doing that. So it's considering it. So
watch this space. I think it's a fascinating subject, and would absolutely be great to take it to that next step. In terms of metrics, coming back to that, so you've talked a bit about metrics that you've used. What kind of metrics did you apply to things like team communication and leadership behaviors in your evaluation?
So as far as the assessment goes, is that?
Yeah.
So I think it was more, again, so most of this was driven by observation. So it was, when I would visit, as far as team communication goes, I'd visit daily stand-ups and no one was talking about the work, or no one was talking about an improvement effort. Like, that was a red flag. So as far as like again, measuring that, it was kind of like a scale, 1 to 5 going into it. So that could be applied on all those 4 elements, just by general observation.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
I guess one of the other things I'll add on to that, John, was all of these teams do daily stand-ups and they have visual huddle boards. And so even without talking with the team, like we could observe what was happening on the huddle board. So we had different methods of insight into what was happening. So, if you're looking at a huddle board and the team has no metrics about how they're doing and no metric about anything they're working on, they're telling you a story. There were lots of different indicators of how these teams were doing.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm, as I say, trying to get through as many as possible because there are quite a few interesting ones. I'm jumping ahead, and I would love to hear the answers to these ones. But so next one is, what did you do, if anything, about the red teams? Or what are you planning to do if you haven't done anything yet?
Well, I think what we found is that we couldn't help them to actually make a behavior change. Like, I don't know how many people have tried to lose weight. If you have, you're aware yourself of how difficult it is to change behaviors. We found it enormously difficult to try to make an impact on some of these supervisors and change some of their behaviors. So over time, we moved away from focusing on trying to improve that and focused more on setting a minimum activity goal that we expected. We asked each team to produce at least 1 innovation each quarter. So we just kind of set a minimum threshold of activity so they weren't doing nothing. They were trying to do something. And we focused more on supporting the green teams, putting our energies there to help the teams that were excited about it, who could not get enough coaching. As well as they were doing, they were so excited. And when Colin would come back and kind of give them extra attention, they just thrived. And so we tried to focus, if we think back to the garden analogy again, we focused on the plants that were really well suited to this climate we were trying, and gave less attention to plants that were just not going to thrive in this environment.
Okay, thank you. And there's a few related questions about that last point. So let me see if I can paraphrase into something that covers a few of the questions. So we've talked about the red teams. There'll be teams yellow. So what is the approach to try and coach, I guess, a team from yellow to green? And can we coach the frontline supervisor, for example, to move from yellow to green? Or to directly ask the question from this attendee, is replacement of the leader the only way to do that?
Really great question. Thinking back to my approach with those yellow supervisors, I would say there's probably 2 things that would mainly contribute them being yellow. So one is just a situation, like I mentioned before, like one time they may have had capacity to really showcase what they were working on. And the next time they could have been swamped in work and not having, the time to dedicate to improvement. So that was one aspect of helping just them prioritize and understanding like the flow of their work that was coming in, to take advantage of the time when you have it, to make those improvement efforts. So that was one main coaching effort. And as far as the supervisors themselves, I feel that I think it's definitely more possible to coach them into being green. I think that kind of like what Krista mentioned, that maybe the environment or the type of work or transactions or the things that they were doing weren't suited to them. But I think it is possible. It's just finding that focus, finding that bright spot that they can rally around as a supervisor and as a team.
So if I could add to that about those bright spots, we've done a couple things since we did this analysis. The first is offering problem-solving labs. And what those were opportunities for some of those bright spots. Like suppose you're a person really excited about Lean, but you have a red supervisor. This is a chance for that person to come to a problem-solving lab and learn how to do this and get direct coaching from Colin in a 7-week course, and really like kind of learn to do this without that supervisor. Like Colin's is kind of the surrogate, encouraging them to engage. And we saw some amazing results with those problem-solving labs. They really love that. The other thing that we've done is several times when we've identified issues across all teams that we could see everybody's struggling with this a little bit, the yellow teams much more, we would have a leadership meeting where we bring all the supervisors together and do like a short coaching session, you know, maybe like 40 minutes, focusing on a specific topic, like here's how to facilitate your team to talk about this sort of work, or here's how to ask open-ended questions so you don't just like shut down conversation in your team. Like once the team starts talking, you're gonna have a better chance, you know, helping them learn how to engage. Or if they're struggling with an element of problem solving, we might focus on just that element to help them get over a difficulty there. So kind of some group coaching with all the supervisors, so no one supervisor feels like, oh, this is about me not doing it. Kind of helping everyone work together, and also we're hoping there's like some of the green supervisors are modeling their behavior a little bit, where the other supervisors, the ones that are struggling, can kind of observe what they're doing and hear what they're doing to try to move forward.
Okay, thank you. And just a follow on from that, and this one's from me, I guess, and it's just, you mentioned so senior level buy-in, if you like, support, less important, back to the sunlight thing. Have you shared these findings with your executive lead? And is there any role do you think that they can play in helping to bring teams up from, so not necessarily the level of support, but actually, if I was in that position, I'd find this fascinating, and I'd actually want to try and do something to change it. So has there been any conversation around that?
So Colin and I are looking at each other. Who's going to take this one? So one thing that still continues is that Colin meets monthly with the mid-level managers one-on-one to essentially coach them and help them understand what their teams need and how to help. I think I have to say, I don't know that the mid-level managers are any different than the frontline managers. If they're red or yellow, we had an enormous challenge getting them to change their behaviors.
Yeah.
You know, if they're comfortable being a micromanager, it's really hard. They have to want to make that difference themselves. There wasn't much we could impact them with on the outside. I don't know, Colin, you would have anything to add on that?
Yeah, I echo the same sentiment. And like Krista mentioned before, for those green teams that I would visit and they would want me to keep on visiting and want more and more, I observe that again from those mid-level managers as I kind of meet with them and coach them. You know, those green managers are the ones that want to know more versus maybe the yellow or red managers that just like, this isn't their cup of tea. Like, this is not something that they want. They'll try to make the best effort they can, but it's just not the mindset that they're strong in.
Yeah.
Okay.
This gets back to our point of, if you're going to start an initiative or you want to try to work with a department to really get a continuous improvement program going, pick your partner wisely. Ask around, like, who's someone that others really admire, who you see these positive behaviors from. Those are the folks you want to work with.
Okay, thank you.
We
I've
find
got
at
time
Monash
for...
University, just the opposite is true. I often find top executives want you to work with a team that's really struggling. And often they have one of these yellow or red managers. And I'm like, this is going to be rough sledding.
Okay, time for one last question, and it's a bit of a biggie. So we've talked about ground up, we've talked about the importance of frontline supervisors. And in your case, this isn't the case that there's little awareness of senior leadership, but in a model where there's a lot happening on the ground and the senior leadership perhaps aren't aware of it, aren't supportive of it, is there a danger that the whole program or initiative falls when there's a change of senior leadership, and how can we, I guess, guard against that as a community? So, you know, our president or vice chancellor changes, doesn't believe in continuous improvement. What can we do to, I guess, mitigate the risk of the program failing when there's that change of leadership?
No, I mean, those are just going to happen. It's sometimes you're going to have a cloudy day. But the thing I would emphasize is they're really far away. Sometimes you have bad weather, but everyone keeps gardening, right? Focus on that level because they're fine. They don't even know what the chancellor is doing. You know, it's too far away to make. And, you know, the sun is going to come out. Things keep changing at a university, I find. So I wouldn't let that rock the boat too much. We've seen high-level leaders change, and it hasn't really affected our program.
Okay, so keep doing good work. Keep evidencing the benefits of the work that you do, and the rest will hopefully take care of itself. Okay, well, listen, thank you very much. We have run out of time. Krista and Colin, you will be able to see some of the remaining questions. If you do have time to hang around and perhaps type the answers in, if you have time to do so. I know you're both very busy, and it's just the start of your working day. So listen, thank you very much again. We are going to move very swiftly into a very short presentation on the 2024 International Conference, which Linda Spinks from the University of Cambridge is going to take us through. So just a very short overview of what to expect and look out for in the International Conference when it comes back to Europe and in the UK in October of this year. So Linda, over to you.
Thanks, John. Just make sure I turn my sound on. Share my screen. Okay, so great to share our growing plans for the conference in 2024. Just a few short months now. I'm sure those months will fly by really quickly. So yeah, conference is coming to Cambridge, the 23rd to the 25th of October this year. Our website is live. There'll be a link. The very last slide will include a QR code with a link for you to access our website. The website is now at the stage where more information is being added all the time. Registration and submission of abstracts will open on Monday of next week, perhaps towards lunchtime, talking to our website people. It'll be sort of late morning. So our theme, sustainability and lean, bridging innovation and tradition, thinking about processes for now and the future. This information is on the website, but just to give you an idea, if you're thinking about submitting an abstract, we're looking at this from different angles. And I think some of that actually talks to the presentation we've just seen from Krista and Colin about, and that sort of last question, how do we make sure there's a legacy both within our institutions and within the network? How do we create sustainable processes? How do we sustain ourselves and make sure we continue to be effective and efficient, etc., etc. But there's lots of hints and tips on the webpage for that. What have we got in store? We've got a lot of things in store. We're still, as you're aware, very much in the planning stage, but we're already thinking about how we can best share some of the history of Cambridge with attendees. The first day we will be at the Cambridge Union Society, which is the home of the debating chamber, where debates have been held for centuries now, a couple of centuries now. The first time I had any awareness of that, there was a live stream of across the university of the Dalai Lama speaking from the debating chamber. So we'll be walking in the steps of some quite famous people. We'll be having the conference dinner at Fitzwilliam College, which is one of the 31 Cambridge colleges, and we're looking forward to a great evening there. Oh, come on, slides, move on. So I'm just going to play you our conference video, assuming the technology will work and it will play, and then we'll just close off after that.
How do we sustainably bridge the gap between tradition and innovation? Here at Cambridge, we're no strangers to tradition. From cobbled streets to historic buildings to gowns and graduation ceremonies, we've been known for academic excellence for more than 800 years. From this tradition springs innovation. The discoveries of gravity, evolution, and DNA all have their roots at the university. From stem cell research to botanical firsts, Cambridge respects the past but dares to do things differently. But in a world that is ever evolving, how do we ensure that we keep moving in a sustainable way? From profit to people to planet, we need to have a long-term sustainable vision for the future. Continuous improvement and a lean way of thinking provides us with a framework to support our traditional structures, whilst allowing future generations the space to grow and meet their needs. Implementing sustainable change isn't easy, but these challenges are the foundations upon which we build our bridges to the future.
Throughout its history, Cambridge University has maintained a position of distinction amongst global universities, not by standing still, but through a process of continuous evolution. From historical challenges to recent issues like Brexit and the COVID-19 pandemic, the university has shown its ability to respond to challenges by adapting and changing. Fostering a culture of continuous improvement in our universities is essential for us to maintain our position in the world of higher education.
The University of Cambridge's mission, and indeed our passion, is to contribute to society through education, learning, and research at the highest international levels of excellence. We know many of you share this passion. We are delighted to invite you, our higher education colleagues from across the globe, to join us in Cambridge in 2024 to learn from and inspire one another.
The Lean HE Network has been encouraging us to share our stories for over 10 years. Coming together from across the world, we found motivation and inspiration in each other's stories, and we can't wait to welcome you to the University of Cambridge in 2024 to hear your stories and together discover how we can improve processes both for now and in the future.
About that. Why is it? Don't we just love technology? There we go. So next steps really from everyone. Put the dates in your diary. Look out for our communication throughout the usual channels. You might have seen a little bit of activity on the various LinkedIn groups. We'll be sending out emails. Towards nearer the time, we'll be sending out a newsletter. So if you've registered an interest, you'll be receiving something into your inbox. Think about that theme. Think about what you might like to submit as an abstract, and yeah, if you've got any questions, emails there to contact us. The final slide, I'll just leave it up I'll continue sharing for a few seconds. There's a QR code there that will give you access to our conference website, which, as I said, will be updated with more information as and when we get it. Thank you. That's all I had to say.
Thank you so much, Linda, for coming here and making a small promotion for the conference. For me, it's hard to explain how much I look forward to this. This is kind of my favorite conference, and now it's happening kind of in the area and the surroundings of University of Cambridge, which to me has a specific sound of quality and history. So if there are any questions for Linda regarding the conference, you could still put them in the Q&A app. But I have one question that does not relate to any of the presentations or stuff that's going to be in conference. But would it, for me, for instance, be would I be able to have a go at punting?
Oh, I'm sure you'll be able to. One of the things that we're putting together is a bit of a sort of a scavenger hunt, a list of activities that people can do while they're in Cambridge. And I think having a go at punting will be on that list. So we'll signpost where people can go. Keep praying for good weather though, because you can get quite wet in a punt.
If I do that, I'll make sure to have it filmed so that
absolutely,
I could share with the community when I fall into the river. There doesn't seem to be any questions directly related to the conference, but as Linda said, it's possible to send those directly to the conference and the hosts and the team behind it. There will, of course, be more information on the conference on our different channels, and John will say a little bit about that towards the closing of this webinar. So again, thank you, Linda, for coming and promoting the conference and putting a little bit of anticipation into our hearts and minds.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Linda. So just really to close the session today, it's just really to thank everyone, thank all of our presenters for making the time, very much appreciated. And just really a plea to all of you to stay connected with our community. We can learn so much from one another and support one another by being part of the community. And there's different ways in which you can stay connected. So there's a Lean HE Europe LinkedIn group, which I have sent a link on the chat. There's also a Lean HE Europe website, and also a Lean HE Global YouTube channel. So the intention is to, well, this webinar has been recorded and it will be uploaded to the global YouTube channel in the coming days ahead. We've got, I think, around about 160 subscribers to the channel and about 60 videos from ranging from the 2021 conference hosted by Strathclyde, the 2022 conference hosted by the University of Melbourne, and content generated by various networks across Europe. So I would encourage you, if you haven't already looked at that, please do so, because there's a lot of really good content on that and lots to learn from other people in the community. So last thing for me is really just to say thank you for attending, and I very much hope to see you at a Lean HE event sometime soon. So thank you very much indeed.